My Lord, several years ago, when I was actually working for the local government association with councillors in Malvern Hills, I came to enjoy being in the town. I found a super B&B on the main road, and particularly enjoying the backdrop of the wonderful Malvern Hills. But I also heard of issues and concerns even back then with the Malvern Hills Trust, as it likes to be known. So when I saw this bill coming forward, my interest was piqued. It did not take very long research to see that the changes in this bill were meeting considerable opposition, and I emphasise the word considerable. Now, as a former elected mayor, I'm absolutely no stranger to some vocal members of the public opposing any modernisation within any organisation, however they are constituted, and indeed resistant to any change whatsoever at all. And don't get me started on development. But, my lords, the opposition to this bill is something of a completely different order. As a member of our office staff said to me yesterday, I have close friends in Malvern. They said the whole town is talking about it, and the evidence confirms that they are. So, Baroness Bennett, be assured they are having the debate, but actually it's mainly in acrimonious public meetings. Might I suggest that the fact that the House has received over 50 individual, highly articulate, well-intentioned petitions, including petitions from the local county, district and parish councils, former chairs of the Malvern Hills Conservators, and even from a group of current trustees, that to me is a red flag. Raising substantive concerns in respect of this bill, it surely tells a tale in itself. I think the House has received more petitions in respect of this bill than it has received in total for the past 10 years, my lords, for all private bills. And the fact that their concerns appear to be being completely ignored does beg the question as to the motives behind these changes. What will the bill change, and what powers is it granted that is causing such a furor of public opinion? My lords, I don't doubt that the trust could and should be improved, which is why I'm not opposing this bill, but think that it must and should be improved. But I do believe that their PR has been dire, or we wouldn't be in the situation that we are now. The noble lord said how wonderfully that things have been managed, how good things are. Oh, but we have to change. I would argue that they have not made the case for change to the general public, and that is by the manner in which they have conducted their affairs and their consultation, and I think that does need to be looked at. It is clear that the promoters, as well as consolidating the existing 5 acts, wish to be granted substantial additional powers, whilst being governed by a much smaller and, as outlined very well, I thought, by Earl Attlee, a smaller, less democratic board. For example, if one of the 6 elected people stand down, the other 6 can appoint a person in their stead. It is absolutely easier to be taken over by a single issue pressure group. The evidence suggests that little, if any, thought has been given by the promoters to the substantive concerns raised by the levy-paying public in Malvern, who fund this, and I'm going to use the words, public body. And I commend the work of the Malvern Environmental Protection Group in bringing these issues to the attention of the public. My lords, there is even a dispute as to what the constitutional nature of the trust actually is. Several noble lords have referred to them as being a charity, and yet as recently as last month we have heard they are deemed by a KC to be a public body, and that is usually defined by the amount of taxation that they get as part of their revenue, which again was well expressed by the noble Earl. This must be clarified, noble lords, because you will be very aware that there are significant legal differences as to whether you are a public body or a charity. in what you can do, what you can't do, and to whom you are accountable. This lack of clarity is making members of the public nervous and, whether rightly or wrongly, question the motives and intentions of the trustees going forward. And this has, understandably, set hairs running. And it might seem with good reason. Because something starts to smell not quite right when, as mentioned by the Noble Earl Attlee, their former chair, the issues around the former chair, and I understand that she could not find out how much a senior official of her trust was being paid. And we all know that if you're the chair of any board, you are responsible. So to not be able to know and have that information tells you that something is a bit rotten in the state of Denmark. These anxieties and fears were further fuelled when at recent meetings to discuss this bill and the financial arrangements regarding it, 8 trustees were effectively gagged from speaking or voting. And in successive board meetings, the level of transparency and accountability would appear to fall significantly below what would be expected of any public body, and indeed any well-run charity. Under such circumstances, I am quite shocked that they are pushing ahead regardless. Surely with this level of concern, with so many unanswered questions, including from their own trustees, should be leading them to think again. So yes, I too am deeply concerned about the governance arrangements. These proposals remove 140 years of accountability to local councils and the public and should not be cast off lightly. What I sense the public feel is that they haven't been given really good reasons for this change. Everything's going wonderful, everything's terrific, it's all managed well, but we need to modernise and move forward. What does that actually mean? If power could pass to a small group of people to take over and run the trust, there is fear that corruption is increased, and of course that changes will be made to alter the nature of and access to the hills, and also that it could make significant amounts of money. The bill erodes the rights of tax-paying residents to question and challenge this new body as to how that money is spent, a right they have enjoyed for 140 years. Retaining its status or clarifying its status as a public body is vital to ensure that the organisation remains subject to a judicial review and the ability to be subject to freedom of information. In summary, I therefore welcome the Noble Earl Attlee's and, to a large extent, Baroness Coffey's proposals within the bill, although I genuinely think the issue about access, the one line in your proposal, is something that I think should be left to trustees and not be down to us to dictate. But I feel that we need to consider the arrangements concerning the appointment of board members and the scope of the levy-paying area, and also to urge my noble lords to carefully consider the application for a general power. What might be of interest to your lordship, and you've got to indulge me on this, it's probably because I'm married to a historian, is that when the lordships in 1995, when the Act was discussed, at that time, Baroness MacLeod of Beauvais said it would empower the Conservatives to change the face of Malvern forever. Lord Hampton added, the Conservatives are seeking powers well beyond those needed to carry out their prime functions. And Lord Moran commented, there is no explanation of why the Conservatives thought that they required these comparatively sweeping powers. And these objections seem to me to be still valid because they haven't answered them, because of the lack of good engagement and good consultation. Finally, my lords, I urge the promoters of this bill to very carefully consider the costs they are incurring. There was yet another acrimonious meeting where questions went unanswered about the amounts of money, and that too is not good. If you're mainly funded by taxpayers, they want to know what you're spending their money on and how much this is all going to cost. It would appear there are estimates that the true final costs could be well over £1 million. compared with their annual income of 1.4 million. Had the Conservatives actively engaged with those who articulated their concerns, I believe they would have saved themselves a great deal of time, effort and expense. And there is still an opportunity to do this now. It should never have been necessary for 5 trustees to have had to petition this House, with the consequences that they and others appear currently arbitrarily suspended from matters relating to that bill. I do believe that the committee have their work cut out, but having been on a private bill committee, I have no doubt that they will do it and do it well. And that the suggestions for their work from both the Noble Baroness and the are going in the right direction. But I really feel that the Conservatives should answer the question raised and conduct themselves in a more open and transparent manner than it would appear is happening at the moment. And then we can come to an amicable situation which we can satisfy most of the people. Because one of the things I've learned over years in politics, you can never please all of the people all of the time. I used to settle for pleasing some of the people some of the time.